Hello, everyone. My name is Princess, and I am the host of, I don't know if it's backwards for you, but Cup of Cocoa and Chat. Normally, I live stream Wednesdays and Fridays um, every Wednesday and Friday, I should say, not every morning, but every Wednesday and every Friday at 6 a.m. until 8. I bring Facebook in because I dual stream on Facebook. My hope and prayer is to eventually dual stream on several platforms at one time. So my hope is to bring YouTube and Instagram in. So I stream on Favorite It right now, and then I bring Facebook in about 6:30. This morning, I did not stream as I normally do, but I will be back streaming on Friday. But today, I just wanted to try something different. So I am recording what I would normally stream so that I can place it on YouTube. I currently have 28 subscribers on my YouTube channel, and I need 50 in order to stream on YouTube. So I'm good with the followers on Instagram, Favorite It, and Facebook. I just need, 12, 3, I need 22 more subscribers to get my 50, 23 to be safe. So that would give me 51 subscribers. So I normally play my intro song on Favorite It, which is "This is the day that the Lord has made," while people are settling in and coming into the room. And then I start, and I bring Facebook in at 6:30 due to the music copyright issues. So I would not be bringing, I would start on Favorite It at 6 a.m. and bring Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube in at 6:30 once I have played whatever music that I play. So I start off with the intro song, and maybe as a filler, I throw another song in just prior to the 6:30 mark when I bring Facebook in. So I'm going to open up and give you a teaser or preview of what I stream. So every Wednesday and Friday, I have a theme. It could be Wisdom Wednesday. It could be Wellness Wednesday. It could be Winning Wednesday. It could be Faithful Filled Friday, Feel Good Friday. So you kind of get where I'm going with it. And then I bring a topic. So today's theme is Wisdom Wednesday. And my topic is practical everyday wisdom. The difference between reaction and response. Okay? So I want to start off by saying good afternoon, beautiful people. Of course, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Grab your cocoa, your coffee, tea, or whatever you're sipping and get cozy. This is Cup of Cocoa and Chat, where we sip, share, and start the morning with a positive vibe. Again, today is Wisdom Wednesday, and our topic is practical everyday wisdom, the difference between reaction and response. So our focus will be primarily on the power of choosing a wise response over a quick reaction. because every moment is a chance to protect our peace, honor our growth, and walk in wisdom. So, again, I am Princess, your host of Cup of Cocoa and Chat. And we sip, share, and start the day with a positive vibe. I stream live every Wednesday and Friday from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., starting on Favorited and then bringing other platforms in about 6:30. We sip cocoa. We bring you real talk, inspiration, community love, and a little something to warm your spirits. You can also catch a similar conversation anytime on my Cup of Cocoa and Chat podcast that I upload every Monday, and it's available on Spotify. So you can go to wherever you listen to Spotify, if it's the app on your mobile device, or through the website on your desktop or your laptop. You can search on Spotify, Cup of Cocoa and Chat, and there you will find my episodes. Currently, I have 5 episodes because I record and upload every Monday. So this week was my 5th episode. So kudos to me. And like I said, you can find that on Spotify. Okay. I plan to go to other platforms, but for right now, we have Spotify. And if you're looking for that extra boost to get you through the week, I drop midweek inspiration across all of my platforms. So follow along and stay encouraged, okay? Let's sip, chat, and grow together. So normally this is the part of my morning where I just pause and check in with all my viewers. Normally I have regular viewers on Favorited, and they come in and I just, check in with everybody. I ask how they're doing, what they're drinking. Then I go over the talking points with them. And today our talking points are going to be defining the difference between react and respond, examples in real life of reactions and responses, what caused us to react instead of respond, and what a wise response looks like. And then I bring it all together and I ground it in a scripture. So I normally start telling my audience on Favorited, before we get too far in the conversation, and I explain to them that we will do a couple of things before we bring Facebook in at 6:30. And so I have some quick scenarios that I want to read. And since I am pre-recording this and it's not an engagement style live, just think about what you would do in each scenario that I read. So the first scenario, someone cuts you off in traffic. Do you respond or do you react? Do you respond or do you react? So reacting to someone cutting you off in traffic would be anger, yelling, as a lot of us do, or tailgating. I hope nobody's tailgating, but anger, yelling, and tailgating, right? A wise response would be to take a deep breath, ease off the gas, and say to yourself, I don't know what they're dealing with, but I do know I value my peace more than this moment. Now, we know a lot of us don't say that, right? Or you may say aloud to yourself, Lord, cover me, or Lord, cover them, and help me stay calm. Now, I know I've been in a couple of situations where somebody cut me off, and I may say, Lord, help me. Now, I'll say that. I'll be like, Lord, help me, right? Because I've been in a car. I've been a passenger in a car where I've heard some crazy stuff come out of the driver's mouth. I will not repeat that here. However, we need to learn to stop reacting and to respond wiser. So when you take that deep breath and ease off the gas and say to yourself, Lord, cover them and help me stay calm, or I don't know what they're dealing with, but I know I value my peace. That response protects your peace, your safety, and your spirit. Your peace, your safety, and your spirit. You're not you're not excusing the person who cut you off behavior. You're just refusing to let it control you. Because a lot of times things like that can set the tone for our day. And we don't ever want to let negativity into the start of our day, right? So we want to control what our response is. And so we want to make wiser responses. All right, here's another one. A coworker takes credit for your idea. Now, this has never happened to me personally. I have been in a office setting, and this has happened to others, but it's never happened to me where a coworker takes credit for your idea. So reacting. What do you think reacting is? If you react to that, it could be public confrontation. We never want that. Or silent resentment. So a wise response to that would be calmly and professionally follow up, either privately or in a meeting, by saying to your coworker, I'm glad the idea we discussed is being recognized. I actually shared that concept last week during our brainstorming session, and I love to stay involved in bringing it forward. So just setting the tone, letting the coworker know, hey, I seen what you did, and just reminding them, hey, that came out of our brainstorming session together. And that actually was the concept that I came up with. So whether it's in front of the head honchos or, whatever your dynamic in your office is, whether it's the president, the CEO, or whatever, 9 times out of 10, that person knows your work. They know that you are a person who takes the initiative, that you are the person with great ideas, you have a great work ethic. So a lot of times they know that you are the one that came up. So it's nothing wrong with calmly and professionally letting everybody else in the room know, hey, that concept came from me. But I'm good with it, but that concept came from me. Because what that does, it reclaims your voice without drama. It reinforces your value with clarity. And it keeps the door open for collaboration and not conflict. So we never want conflict in the office. So we always want to give a wise response and never react. Some of us react, but we never want to react. We want to come up with a wise response. And most importantly, it protects your reputation as someone who leads with integrity and wisdom. Okay? Number 3. So I got 5 of these. I have 3 more left. You're told something you don't agree with in a group chat. Reacting would be sarcasm, arguing, or sending a heated message. What does that do? What does that do? Nothing really, right? A smart or wise response would be to pause, to reflect, and respond with clarity and respect. Okay? So, in other words, you might say something like, I see that kind of differently. And I love to offer another perspective when the time is right. Right? Or, that's an interesting take. Here's how I see it. One acknowledges the other voice without dismissing it. It allows room for respectful disagreement. It keeps the group chat from turning into a battleground. And we never want that, right? Sometimes the wisest response is also to take the conversation offline and do a one-on-one session if needed, right? And we have to learn to regulate our emotions. So a response is the better way to go in that scenario. Number 4, a family member shows up unannounced. Now, I don't often have this happen, and I don't know about you. But there are people who just don't like anyone showing up at their house unannounced, whether it's a family member or not. And they react instead of responding. And their reaction shows frustration. It comes with slamming doors. Not sure who does that. Or giving the cold shoulder. But a wise or a smart response would be something more in the lines of, hey, it's good to see you. I wasn't expecting company, so I might not be able to host the way I like to. Or can we plan something next time so I can give you my full attention? That's something you could say. Because that acknowledges the visit kindly, right? It puts a different spin on it. It honors your own boundaries. And it sets the stage for better communication in the future. Now, I would think if the person comes to your house unannounced and it is a family member, they'll probably do it again. So instead of reacting, and I would do a gentle response so that they understand that this is not cool. I'm setting a boundary. Please don't do this again. However you need to say it without reacting, respond to it instead. Because you're being warned without being walked over. And that's wisdom with grace. So we always want to handle all situations with grace. You know, we want to give people grace. We want to accept grace. And we want to give grace. All right, so this is the last one. Your food order is wrong for the second time. What do you do? Do you react or you respond? So, reacting again could be frustration, showing the weight of frustration. It could be complaining loudly or dismissing the situation. But a wise response would be to remain calm and polite, but assert your needs. Because remember, they have gotten your order wrong twice. You don't want any mishaps or anything negative going on with your food, right? So you want to remain calm and polite, but assert your needs. You know, you can say something like, I'm sorry to bother you, but my order is still not correct. Could we please get this fixed? I would really appreciate it. Something on those lines, right? Because it acknowledges the mistake without blame, because the waiter wasn't to blame. You know, they recorded what you wanted correctly and they passed it on to the next part of that puzzle, and that person got your order wrong. Maybe it was the cook. It could be the waiter. Maybe the waiter wrote everything down incorrectly. So that would be worth something to explore, but a nicer way than showing frustration, complaining loudly, and dismissing the situation, because that never works and that never helps, right? So you want to make clear with a respectful request for the resolution. And you want to avoid escalating the situation, keeping the focus on finding the solution, because that shows patience, respect for both yourself and the staff, and it also gives a chance to practice emotional regulation in everyday life. And a lot of us do not have emotional regulation. I see it every day on social media with the toxic situations that I've encountered, not myself personally, but I've witnessed or I've seen in different lives and different things on a different social media. You know, Facebook can be very toxic sometimes. Instagram can be as well. TikTok, definitely. So a lot of creators, or as they call them on TikTok, comment cousins, or the hosts, have not mastered regulating their emotions. So it's about 24 minutes into our segment. So we have about 5 minutes, and usually at this point, I normally play another song for my favorite audience. And today would have been Golden by Jill Scott, because that's a song to me that's uplifting, and it has an empowering tone that flows perfectly with our theme of choosing wisdom and protecting our peace, right? So I would have done that, and then I would have followed it up with telling my audience that the lyric tie-in to the song Golden is, I'm taking my freedom. So those of you that are not familiar with Jill Scott, you know, it's taking my freedom. I'm pulling it off the shelf. So I would have tied that lyric into my theme and my topic of the day. Then I would, ask the audience, what do they think of what we discussed so far? And then I open up Facebook and greet them, give them, I am Princess. So I introduce myself, I introduce the platform. I talk about when I stream. I talk about my podcast. I talk about my midweek inspiration. And then I go into recapping what we have already done, which is, the music. I go over the focus with them for the day, which is the power of choosing a wise response over a quick reaction, because every moment is a choice. Every moment is a chance to protect our peace, honor our growth, and walk in wisdom. I just go over everything that we talked about. And then I give them a goal for today's segment, which is to help us recognize the difference between reacting and responding, and to encourage all of us to respond to life with wisdom, peace, and intention, even when we're tested, okay? Then I go over the talking points again, and I tell them, let's dive in, take our time, and reflect together, because growth starts in moments like these. So conversations like these give away to growth. So our first talking points is we need to define reaction and response. Okay? So reaction, emotional, immediate, and often impulsive. So reactions are emotional, immediate, and often impulsive. A response, on the other hand, is thoughtful, measured, considers consequences. So that gives us a little time to think when we respond instead of reacting. Now that we've defined the two, let's take a closer look at what sets them apart. Reaction. Reaction is often automatic, okay, and driven by emotion. It happens in the heat of the moment without much thought or reflection. Reactions tend to be impulsive and based on past experiences, fears, or emotional triggers. They may feel satisfying in the moment, but they can lead to regret later. So have you ever reacted to a situation and in that moment it felt great, but later you felt like that wasn't right? So that's what reaction is. That's a reaction. Going back to what we talked about earlier, someone cuts you off in traffic and you immediately yell or honk aggressively. We all may be guilty of that, right? It's emotion driven, quick, often defensive or protective. Reactions usually bypass logic and go straight to feeling. Now let's explore response. A response is intentional and grounded. A little bit more thought process, right? It involves pausing, assessing the situation, and choosing your words or your actions carefully. Responses are based on wisdom, Wisdom, values, and a long-term perspective. Rather than being ruled by emotion, a response is guided by purpose and self-control. Going back to what we talked about. Someone cuts you off, and instead of reacting, you take a breath and you say, maybe they're having a rough day. Thoughtful, calm, and mature. Responses reflect your character, not your monetary move. And like I said, we all have been guilty of road rage in some form. Some more intense, some less intense. I scream out sometimes in my car. A lot of times I said, Lord, please cover me, right? Because I know what my reaction is going to be. So I respond by saying, Lord, please help me. Because I know what some of the things that could come out of my mouth. And, it's not worth it. It's really not worth it. Riding to the red light and looking over at the person or whatever. Like, it's really not worth it. So the takeaway from that is reactions are about the moment. Responses are about the mission. So that's something that we can remember. Reactions are about the moment. Responses are about the mission. So now that we've defined what a reaction and a response are, let's bring it into real life. Because theory is one thing, but wisdom shows up in how we handle everyday moments. I will share a personal story that helped me truly see the difference a little later, okay? So, back to road rage. And I chose road rage to expound on a little more, or expand on a little more, because it's an everyday occurrence. It happens a lot. When we're driving. Those of us that drive, it happens a lot. Even if you don't drive, you have been a passenger in a car and heard road rage either from your driver, the person you're driving with, or you have seen or heard the reactions of the other driver who cut you guys off. So it's an everyday occurrence. It happens a lot. And we've seen it either by the driver side of it or the passenger side. If you haven't experienced or seen anybody with road rage, awesome. But I chose road rage because of the everyday occurrence. So in our real life examples, road rage versus taking deep breath and letting it go. Let it go. Let it go. It is not worth it. People have been killed. People have been hurt. Cars have been damaged. All because of road rage. It's really not worth it. People actually chase people. So it's really not worth it. Take a deep breath and let it go. Snapping back at a rude comment versus pausing and responding with grace. We know that in our society today, we have all kinds of people from all walks of life reacting. I'm choosing my words very carefully here, but we've seen people reacting in nasty, disrespectful ways, right? Instead of just pausing and responding with grace. Financial impulse buys versus budgeting wisely. How many times have you purchased something and spent almost all of your money, and then you sit back and say, why did I buy that? Why did I buy that? Some of us take things back. And some of us keep it and just move on. But that is an impulsive buy, is a reaction to the fact that you just have money to burn or money to spend it on, instead of budgeting wisely and thinking about it later. So here is my real life experience. And this helped me understand the difference between reacting and responding. So this week, it was Monday. So today is the 14th. It was the 12th. So it was Monday. I had a doctor's appointment with a new doctor. And my expectation for that visit was that I was going to establish care, because I'm going from an old doctor that I no longer wanted to see to a new doctor that I had never seen before. So that sets the tone for where I'm going to go with this. So I went to the new doctor hoping to finally get some clarity on an issue I've been dealing with, right? So as I spoke, I could tell that the doctor wasn't really listening. And the reason why is because as I'm talking, she's talking. Also, while I was talking, the nurse is talking. So they're both talking to me, but nobody's listening to me. Nobody's actively listening, right? Their tone, both of their tones were arrogant, and their attitude made me feel dismissive, like my concerns weren't valid. So I am one of those people that I used to go from 0 to 100 quick. And I'm learning through therapy to regulate my emotions. So I felt like I was dismissed, right? And like my concerns weren't valid. So now I could have reacted. I could have matched their energy. I could have gotten loud or tried to force respect. And that's never good, to try to force respect on somebody who isn't respecting you in the moment. But instead, I chose to quietly gather myself, stand up, and leave the appointment. So in the middle of everything, I got up, I grabbed my things, and I said, "You guys have a great day." And I left the appointment. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I simply removed myself from a space that wasn't serving me. Then I did something even more powerful. I went and took myself to lunch, because I deserve it. I sat down in a restaurant and had a peaceful meal and reminded myself that my voice matters. I chose not to let someone else's behavior dictate how I showed up for myself in that day. So, to me, that was a response, not out of anger, but out of self-respect for myself. And it taught me this: sometimes walking away is the wise response. It's not weakness, it's strength wrapped in grace. Walking away can be both a reaction and a wise response, depending on the intention behind it. So because I wasn't angry and I just refused to allow myself to be dismissed, my reaction was powerful and self-honoring. It was powerful and a self-honoring response. Now, looking back on that experience, I had to ask myself, what made that moment feel so intense? Why was walking away the right move for me? And even more importantly, why do so many of us find ourselves reacting before we even realize it? So let's talk about what really fuels those automatic reactions. And the answer to the questions that I asked myself, what made it so intense is I don't like to be disrespected. I don't like to be little girled. And I feel like letting you or allowing someone else to do that to me is disrespectful to me. So at all costs, I am going to self-respect myself, and I'm going to protect my peace. And so that I would not go from 0 to 100, I felt like walking away was the best choice for me in that moment, because I know myself and I know that I would have blown up and it wouldn't have been good for either one of us. So, what causes us to react instead of respond? Stress, ego, unresolved trauma, and lack of emotional regulation. Reactions don't just happen out of nowhere. They're often rooted in deeper emotional triggers and life patterns. So here are a few common causes. Stress. When we're overwhelmed, tired, or under pressure, our emotional bandwidth shrinks. In those moments, our ability to pause and process is very limited, and we're more likely to snap, shut down, or lash out, right? Think of stress as the pressure cooker. It builds up inside, and if there's no release valve, it bursts. So you never want to get to that point. Let's look at ego. The ego wants to protect our image, pride, and sense of control. When we feel challenged or disrespected, ego can push us to react defensively, even if the situation doesn't truly warrant it. Okay? The ego says, I need to win. Wisdom says, I need to grow. And we always want to grow. Unresolved trauma. Old wounds can bleed into new situations. If you ever had someone dismiss you in the past, a present day experience that feels similar can trigger a strong emotional reaction. So if you ever had some type of trauma in the past and something similar happens in the present, it can trigger a negative or an emotional reaction, even if it's not the same context. So when the past hasn't healed, it often shows up in present uninvited. Lack of emotional regulation. If we haven't practiced managing our emotions, they can manage us. And I refuse to let my emotion manage me. Like, I am in therapy. I am not ashamed to say it. I think it's a good thing. And it helps me. It helps me. It may not be the thing for you, but it helps me. So reacting becomes the default when we don't have tools like breathing, reframing, or self-talk to create space between feeling and action. So you need something between feeling and action, because if you don't have something to help you, Feeling and action causes a reaction. Okay? Emotional regulation is not about suppressing your feelings. It's about mastering how we express them. Okay? We may not always control what happens, but we can learn to control how we choose to show up. We've uncovered roots of our knee-jerking reactions, which is stress, ego, old wounds, and more. Now let's flip the script and see what it looks like when we choose a wiser response instead of giving into those triggers. What does a wise response look like? Listening fully before speaking. Asking yourself, will this matter tomorrow? Choosing words that reflect your values, not your mood. So pausing before you act. For me, back in the day, my reaction in that doctor's office would have been bad. Back then, my reaction would have been 0 to 100 in a heartbeat. High emotions would have taken over, and I would have blew up or shut down. So I either would have cursed their tails out, or I would have been sitting there ignoring them. And that's never good for me or the other person. So now I choose to respond. I give myself permission to pause. In the doctor's office that day, I felt belittled, like I was being little girled. So instead of firing off or pleading my case, I simply stood up, left, and reclaimed my power. And I am currently looking for a new doctor. Okay? So setting healthy boundaries. A wise response isn't about being passive or let people walk over you, because that's not what happened. It's about standing firm in your worth. By walking away calmly, you're sending a clear message. I deserve respect, and I will not stay in a place that dismisses me. Okay? Choosing your words and your silence. Words. If you do speak, let them be rooted in your values, measured, respectful, and direct. And I know if I had gone 0 to 100, my words would not have been rooted in my values and measured and respectful and direct. They would not have been. And silence, if I had chosen to shut down, sometimes the strongest response is choosing not to say anything at all or protecting your peace. Or the flip side of that would have been just sitting there ignoring them, like, because I can sit and ignore a person. Comes to me very easily. But I have learned from those things. I have learned to regulate my emotions. Now, I'm not all the way there. I'm not all the way there. God is still working on me. However, I am learning. And sometimes it takes baby steps to get where you need to be. But I was so proud of myself that I didn't, because I was starting to get hot. And I could feel myself. And I said, you got to get out of here. You have to get out of here. And so with a smile, I got up. I gathered my things. And I said, you guys have a nice day. And left the office. And I could hear them saying, well, where's she going? Out of here. That's for sure. So maintaining emotional mastery. Recognize the difference between reacting from hurt or anger and responding from a place of self-respect. And I felt like I did that. I responding from a place of self-respect, because I respect myself enough to know that I cannot go from 0 to 100. I have to regulate my emotions, right? So use tools like deep breaths, a quick mental mantra like my peace is priceless, or even a brief walk to steady your heart before you act. Okay? Owning your power with grace. A wise response restores dignity to you and to the other person, even if they don't deserve it in the moment. Remember, walking away isn't weakness, it's strength wrapped in grace and self-honor. So our key reflection is a reaction may feel justified, but a wise response reclaims your power and your peace. So now that we've looked at what a wise response looks like in real life, let's ground this wisdom in the word. Because scripture has been teaching this truth long before we had language for emotional regulation or setting boundaries. Okay? One verse that speaks directly to this is found in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 19. And family, I want you to keep this close to your heart, this verse. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. This verse is a master class in emotional maturity. So let's break it down. Quick to listen. This is wisdom's first move, always. Before we react, we've called to lean in and truly hear what's being said, and sometimes more importantly, what's not being said. And that's what I heard on my doctor's visit. Not everything that they were saying, but what they weren't saying. Listening buys us time to understand rather than assume. Slow to speak, our words carry weight. A wise response knows when to speak, how to speak, and when silence is stronger. Slowing down before we speak help us speak with intention, not just emotion. And slow to become angry. Angry isn't a sin, but unmanaged anger is dangerous. It's dangerous. When we rush to anger, we often miss the wisdom moment. A wise response holds space for the feeling, but doesn't let it run the show. So in the moment with that doctor, I was quick to listen to my own spirit, slow to speak, and I walked away instead of letting anger take over. And that was my James, chapter 1, verse 19 in action. And it didn't just protect my peace, it preserved my power. Okay? So, have you ever said something in the heat of the moment that you later regretted? Have you ever said something in the heat of the moment that you later regretted? And what did you learn from it? What did you learn from it? And which one did you tend to do more? React or respond? Because some of us react first. Some of us try to pause and respond. And some of us are still working on it. But whatever it is for you, remember our verse. Remember our verse. What was our verse? Let's go back to our verse. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Now, granted, it's not going to happen overnight, but it can happen. Because from a former 0 to 100, it can happen, right? So I pray, and I journal, and I talk to Jesus every day. And I talk to my therapist too, right? So faith grounds me, but therapy guides me. So faith grounds me, therapy guides me. So I'm going to wrap up, but I want to leave you with this thought. A reaction is about the moment, but a response is about the mission. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You know, they say choose your battles, right? And you don't have to shrink when someone challenges your peace. Today we've learned that wisdom shows up in how fast we speak, but in how thoughtfully we move. So let me repeat that, because sometimes I can't even read my writing. Today we learned that wisdom shows up not in how fast we speak, not in how fast we speak, but in how thoughtfully we move. So let's go into the rest of the day choosing to respond with clarity, grace, and purpose. So if you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to like, share, and invite others to join us here. As I said, eventually I will be live streaming Cup of Cocoa and Chats. If you want to catch me on Fridays, I think I may start recording my segments. I'm not really sure. I'm still working that part out until I gain my 50 subscribers on YouTube. But I will be back on Friday, either favorite it or Facebook. You can go to my bio and find all of those things out. But until then, I want you to take care. I want you to be bold. And as always, peace, blessings. I love you. And I mean it. See you guys. Thanks for listening.